You could smell ice. I knew it because you can smell it.
What do you mean?
Keenness, a keenness in the air. There's something about ice that you can smell.
From the SS Californian again, an hour before the collision.
We are stopped and surrounded by ice.
The Titanic responded, "Shut up, I'm busy." Titanic was now travelling faster than at any other time in the 3 days since she'd left Ireland.
The ship was travelling, we understand, at about 22 knots. That is nearly 25 miles an hour. And for motorists, that gives a fair impression of speed if you were to consider the speed your car is doing as you're approaching the 30-mile-an-hour limit. And remember that the ship is weighing something in the region of 35,000 tons, possibly more, with water alongside, moving with it. Quite difficult to stop. Definitely an excessive speed.
Weather was perfect. Absolutely calm, and we were flat out. We were out to break a record. There's no question about that.
You believe that?
Yes, I do believe it.
Being a maiden voyage, they may well have been trying to get a convenient docking time in New York to suit the passengers and to get maximum publicity.
I was talking to a pal of mine. He was sitting on my bunk. All of a sudden, she came to a halt. There was no fuss. It was like putting your brakes on a car, and you gradually came to a halt. And I went for it on the promenade deck, and I looked down. I couldn't see any damage at all above the waterline. But what I did see was ice in the well deck, the forward well deck. And I thought, hello, we've hit an iceberg.
She said she didn't know what it was, but she knew it was this terrible something that had been hanging over her for weeks. What it was, precisely, she neither knew nor cared. It was it.
I saw the purser, and I said, "Mr. McElroy, if I can do any good, you let me know. It's the best thing you can do is get back into bed. You catch your death of cold."
My father picked me up out of bed, wrapped a blanket around me, carried me, and put me down with my mother by a lifeboat, and he said, "Now, don't move from here. Whatever anyone says, don't move."
The drop from the boat deck to the water was about between 70 and 80 feet. And you could hardly see the water, and people didn't want to go. They got in their minds she was unsinkable.
The officers didn't know whether it will sink or not, whether it could still float. So he said, all we can do is go in the cabin and pray.
By then, the captain had ordered out lifeboats and women and children. Lower the lifeboats and stand by. That was the order. Stand by.
He put me in the lifeboat, and he put my mother in, and he said to me, "Now you look after your mother." And I looked up as this boat went down the side. It's a terribly long way down to that dark sea. I remember looking up and seeing him leaning over, saying, "Be good, look after Mummy." And that was the last I saw of him. He made no attempt to get to the boat at all.
It was so sad to have to take the wives away from their husbands and leave the husbands up on deck. And I knew that she was sinking then. And I knew what chances we were just waiting for death.
At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, Titanic sank. News of the disaster filtered through by the newfangled radio to the outside world, to America, where at first the reports comforted. Then, the enormity of the tragedy began to emerge. In England, in Titanic's home port, Southampton, whole streets went into mourning. They held 2 inquiries into why it had happened. The first was in America, the second in London. They said Titanic had been going too fast and that she'd ignored ice warnings, that the crew had been unfamiliar with each other and there'd been no lifeboat drill for passengers or crew, and that the watertight compartments that had made the unsinkable ship unsinkable had failed. And crucially, the inquiries agreed that when the disaster had occurred, there'd been too few lifeboats to carry the passengers and crew to safety. Rightly or wrongly, the captain of the Titanic Captain Smith was blamed particularly by the Americans for the fact that Titanic was traveling too fast. Rightly or wrongly, the captain of the Californian, Captain Lord, was blamed by both inquiries for failing to come quickly to the rescue of the stricken liner. And to tidy matters up, the British wrote new rules to ensure that never again would a liner put to sea with too few lifeboats to rescue all who sailed in her. But for the 1,500 men, women and children who died in the Titanic, it was all too late. Their bodies had been picked up from the sea, and many were brought here to a special graveyard in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Musicians had continued to play as the ship went down. The fact was remembered on the gravestones, and the ship's orchestra slipped into the Titanic legend. Comber, Northern Ireland. 80 years ago, the men who designed and built Titanic were brought up in and around this village. At the turn of the century, shipbuilding was among Ireland's biggest industries, and the Andrews family were among the province's biggest employers. They ran, and still run, a flax mill in the heart of Comber. Today, the chairman is Sir John Andrews. He was 9 years old when the first of the great sister ships was launched.
I remember them knocking out the blocks and watching her slide down the slip. When you saw nearly 50,000 tons sliding down into the sea, it couldn't fail to impress you. It was a big day in Belfast.
Sir John's uncle, Thomas Andrews, was one of Titanic's design team. He sailed on the maiden voyage. He went down with her.
Do you remember hearing the news of the disaster?
Yes, certainly. I was going back to school that day, and we were at home, and when we heard that there had been a disaster, the problem was if there had been some saved. And the telegrams kept coming in to my home and recording the names of those that had been saved. And I can remember my family looking for his name, but unfortunately it didn't come. It was a very sad day for the family and a very desperate day.
The life of Thomas Andrews, shipbuilder, is remembered by this memorial hall across the road from the flax factory. It's now a school, and to mark the 70th anniversary of the sinking of Titanic, the children there mounted an exhibition.
Are you interested in the Titanic?
Yes.
Why?
Because Thomas Andrews lived here and he designed the Titanic. She's bigger than any ship in the world.
And what happened to her?
She was thought to be unsinkable and she did sink. The Titanic sank and there was only 16 lifeboats. Everybody was panicking, trying to get into a lifeboat. I think it was very sad because there was a lot of people drowned and froze to death. We saw a film of it, and whenever I saw the second part, I was crying.
Why was that?
Because it was frightening.